For over 6 months, the state of Texas has been under a near total abortion ban. And just last week, Oklahoma, a neighboring state where many women who needed abortions from Texas traveled to if they could scrounge together the resources, the Senate in Oklahoma just approved their own near total ban on abortion. Not to be outdone, on Monday this week, Idaho copycatted Texas and passed a 6-week abortion ban enforced by vigilante. But in this race to see who could most viciously control the bodies, the lives, and the destinies of women, right now Missouri has to be in the lead. They just introduced a law that would ban all abortions, including in the cases of ectopic pregnancies. Now, ectopic pregnancies are pregnancies where the fertilized egg implants and starts to grow outside the woman's uterus, most often in the fallopian tube. These are non-viable pregnancies. That means they will never produce a healthy baby. But they often, if they're not disrupted, if they're not ended, can lead to the death of the woman. So the state of Missouri just said that a woman is forced to carry these pregnancies even if it is a death sentence. And that's not all. They also introduced a law that would make it against the law to help a woman from Missouri get to another state and get an abortion in another state. Legal experts have compared this to the Fugitive Slave Acts that were in effect before the Civil War, where people in free states were required to participate in kidnapping and returning Black people who were accused of having escaped slavery. Take this very seriously. The fanatical haters of women, the Christian fascists and the theocrats who are driving this assault on abortion are deadly serious. They do intend to enslave women through forced motherhood. And within a matter of months, the Supreme Court, which has been packed by fascist judges by Donald Trump, is set to rule on a case that could obliterate abortion protections nationwide. This is why I, together with others, initiated the emergency movement RiseUpForAbortionRights.org. And this is why we held powerful protests breaking the suffocating silence against this on International Women's Day last week. A little later in the show, we're going to show you some footage from those protests and invite you and urge you to be part of mass meetings taking place this weekend across the country to get organized to take this resistance higher. It is very urgent. And we're calling for days of wearing green, April 8th. This is the symbol that was taken up by women in Latin America who fought and decriminalized abortion in several countries there by going into the streets. So we have a day of mass wearing green on April 8th. And on April 9th, we're calling people back into the streets in even greater numbers, greater determination, and more defiance to build yet further protests, aiming to create a situation in this country where there is such outcry from below, such resistance, that the Supreme Court doesn't feel they can get away with obliterating these rights, and where we reverse this direction overall. But before we go there, we here on the RNL, the Revolution Nothing Less show, want to pull back the lens and give you a deeper understanding of where all this oppression, this drive to control women's reproduction comes from. Why are we, 50 years after this right was won, the right to abortion, having to fight to maintain it? Where does this desire to control women's reproduction and destiny come from? Examining this question, coming to a scientific understanding of the source of this oppression and the revolution that's needed to end this, is really a major part of the work that Bob Avakian has done over decades. Coming to a more deeply scientific understanding of this and its solution is a key part of the new synthesis of communism that he has forged. So what we want to do now is share with you an excerpt where he gets into this very succinctly in his 2018 speech called Why We Need an Actual Revolution and How We Can Really Make Revolution.
The oppression of women and oppressive gender relations. Not only is white supremacy completely interwoven and tightly stitched together with the development of capitalism in this country, but male supremacy is also completely interwoven and tightly stitched together with the whole historical development of the division between exploiters and exploited, oppressors and oppressed throughout the world, including the capitalist imperialist system which is dominant in the world today. Thousands of years ago, with the development of human societies in such a way that means of production, land, domesticated animals, tools, and so on, were no longer the common resource of people, but instead became privately owned. And with the division of labor resulting in women being responsible for child rearing and men dominating ownership of these means of production and wanting to pass this along to their male heirs and not someone else's, this led to the dominance of the patriarchal family, with the man having power over his wife or wives and children, and women in society overall being subordinate to men, with all the brutality and terror, both mental and physical, that has been used to enforce this, and the whole ideology and culture of male supremacy and misogyny regarding women as lesser, despised beings whose essential purpose is to serve men, that has rationalized and reinforced this inequality and oppression. This patriarchal oppression has also been bound up with the suppression and punishment of relations among people, including intimate relations that run counter to and challenge traditional gender relations. It is crucial that there be determined struggle against this terrible oppression in all of its manifestations. But in order to finally abolish and move beyond all this, in society as a whole, and not just in one country, but for all of humanity, it is necessary to abolish the private ownership of the means of production, converting them into the common property of the people as a whole, and to replace the traditional patriarchal family with relations among people, including intimate relations, that are freely entered into and freed from all vestiges of oppression. This, of course, is impossible under capitalism. Only through the revolution to overthrow this system and uproot all relations of exploitation and oppression that are embodied in this system will it be possible to finally end the fundamental division in which half of humanity is subordinated to and dominated by the other half, and all the brutality and agony bound up with that. This is why, in the new socialist society that will be brought into being with the overthrow of capitalism, the goal, as set forth in the Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America, must be to overcome all tradition's chains embodied in traditional gender roles and divisions, and all the oppressive relations bound up with this in every sphere of society, and to enable women as fully as men to take part in and contribute to every aspect of the struggle to transform society and the world in order to uproot and abolish all relations of oppression and exploitation and emancipate humanity as a whole.
So there's a lot packed into that excerpt, and it's worth watching it more than once and really digging into it and talking about it with others. And through the work that Bob Avakian has done really over decades, he's examined and built on the profoundly liberating history of communist revolutions, history that's been buried but accomplished tremendous things in breaking the chains on women. He's built on this and he's taken it further, including drawing from many of the insights and contributions of feminist thinkers and others. And he's brought this together in a very scientific, revolutionary understanding of the only way to break all these chains through a real communist revolution, and how the fight to break the chains on women, the fight to unleash the fury of women, is a driving force, not only in making this revolution, but in making sure it carries all the way forward. So I want to point you to two other places and really encourage you, if you care about women, if you care about getting humanity free, you have to dig into the work that Bob Avakian has done on this crucial question. This is a sampler, Break All the Chains. It's Bob Avakian on the emancipation of women and the communist revolution, that draws from his work over decades, excerpts of his work in different places, bringing this together. And then the Constitution that he wrote for the new socialist republic in North America, where he lays out concretely how a new society, rooted in a new mode of production, a socialist society, would go about not only guaranteeing and protecting the fundamental rights of women to control their bodies, their lives, their reproduction, but would also unleash ongoing struggle to uproot all the thousands of years of traditions chains that bind women and the attitudes and the thinking and the relations among people, and ending all oppression based on gender and sexual orientation. So all of this is at revcom.us, and we are going to continue to dig into it on this show, and it's a crucial part of getting humanity free. So here we want to play a more recent excerpt from Bob Avakian, writing in this critical moment when abortion is so viciously under attack, where he draws together what this fight around abortion has to do with the fight to emancipate women. This has been illustrated by the RNL, the Revolution Nothing Less team, and we want you to watch it.
The fight for abortion rights and the emancipation of women. The essential question at stake with the escalating attack on the right to abortion is the fundamental status of the half of humanity that is female, whether they will be enslaved or emancipated. Of course, in the case of the extremely small number of females who have transitioned or are transitioning to males, but who retain female reproductive organs and might get pregnant, they should have the right to abortion and to decent health care overall, without any stigma or discrimination. And in general, attacks directed against trans people must be actively, vigorously opposed. But in terms of its essential purpose and objective, the attack on the right to abortion is not aimed at trans people. The essence of what is involved is not inclusion or the lack of inclusion, nor is this about bodily autonomy in some general and abstract sense, a concept which, by the way, would logically include people coming from a very bad place, such as those anti-scientific lunatics and selfish individualists who refuse to get vaccinated against COVID. The attack on the right to abortion is a move to further intensify the already horrific oppression of women, denying them control of their lives and their very bodies, reducing them to breeders of children, cruelly subordinated to men and a patriarchal male supremacist society. Forced motherhood is in fact female enslavement. Anything which waters down or distracts from this essential truth is objectively aiding this fundamental attack on the half of humanity that is female, is undermining the fight for their emancipation and the emancipation of humanity as a whole from any form of oppression and exploitation.
That excerpt from Bob Avakian captures well why I and other followers of Bob Avakian are in this fight for abortion rights, uniting with people, everybody who can be united from very different political perspectives. And with this in mind, I want to give a special shout out to some of the young viewers of this show who we learned are in areas that there is no organized movement for revolution yet, but learned about this struggle for abortion rights in the International Women's Day protest last week and traveled to the nearest cities to take part. We're really glad this happened. We need much more of this. We need many more people learning about these struggles for abortion rights and the other struggles the revolution is part of through this show and taking them up. And we need people who are lifting their heads in struggle, fighting for abortion rights and fighting against other injustices to be introduced to this show and get deeper into where all this comes from and how we end it. So please spread this show. It's a big part of changing the world. And with that, now we want to move to share with you a little bit more footage of the protest last week on International Women's Day. Last week in our episode, we shared quite a bit from the speeches at the flagship New York City rally. And this week we want to share with you a few voices from the Los Angeles rally and some of the scenes and the voices from people who stood up in different parts of the country. So let's watch.
Without this basic right, women can't be free. Abortion on demand, and without apology.
In 1974, in her anthology In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, Alice Walker wrote, "Did you have a genius of a great-great-grandmother who died under some ignorant and depraved overseer's lash? Or was she required to bake biscuits for a lazy backwater tramp when she cried out in her soul to paint watercolors of sunsets? Or was her body broken and forced to bear children who are more often than not sold away from her? 8, 10, 15, 20 children, when her one joy was the thought of modeling heroic figures of rebellion in stone or clay. It is a question with an answer cruel enough to stop the blood." Walker's visionary words call up a brutal history of institutionalized rape and forced childbearing inflicted on enslaved black women. She skewers the American as apple pie terrorism that shaped racial capitalism and enriched white supremacist wealth and theft. There is a direct through line between these terrorist trolls and the Christian fascist supermajority on the Supreme Court.
We want to just have control of our own bodies, and that's a fucking right.
In 2014, roughly 7 in 10 abortion patients in the United States were between 18 and 29 years old. That's us, right here at UC Berkeley.
We have to fight, and you here are fighting, and you have no idea how much other countries are looking at the U.S. and what we do.
I'm tired of doing nothing, and that is why I'm here right now. I know a lot of students right now, they talk about it, they're like, this is wrong, but we need to be here. We need to make this history happen right now. If the Supreme Court thinks we're going to be bystanders while they take our rights away, they are mistaken.
Without this basic right, women can't be free. Abortion on demand, and without apology.
I was 9 years old when the Islamists took power in Iran. Suddenly our lives turned upside down. Women became second-hand citizens and were forced to cover themselves in long dresses and cover their heads with a veil. Men were given the right to have 4 wives. The value of the women's testimony in the courts became half of the men's. Abortion and birth control pills were banned. I'm here today on behalf of Iranian women to warn you to take fascism and the power of religious institutions seriously.
Not the church, not the state, women must decide their fate.
Not the church, not the state, women must decide their fate.
Not the church, not the state, women must decide their fate.
Not the church, not the state, women must decide their fate.
As bans started rolling out throughout the country, the initiators of this movement looked to the streets and saw that no one was there. The streets were silent. They turned to look to the pro-choice movements, to Planned Parenthood, to NARAL, to the National Abortion Federation, to the Women's March that is happening today. And they were disheartened to learn that those groups all had decided that being in the streets does not matter, that we should just sit back and sit down and wait for Roe to be overturned because that's our destiny. And here's the problem that we have with that. Here in the US, we have laws for bodily autonomy. This means that no person can use any part of your body without your consent. Even if you are dead, and it would save countless lives, no one can use your blood, harvest your organs, use your tissues or your marrow for their benefits without your consent. And if these laws are passed, if Roe is overturned, then what we are saying is, as a nation, is that women have less rights than a corpse. This is not a crisis that we can donate our way out of. And this is not a crisis that a one-off protest is going to solve, no. This demands sustained action. This demands noise. This requires you. We need you to stand up, to rise up, and demand that abortion remains safe, legal, on demand, and without apology.
All right, this beginning that we're showing you just a taste of last week on International Women's Day gives a sense of the suppressed fury and defiance that exists in this country, and it exists among millions and millions, but it needs to be called forward on a much bigger scale and very urgently. That's why I want to end this segment by calling on each of you, everybody watching right now, to do whatever you can, everything you can, to strengthen this movement going forward right now. There are mass organizing meetings this weekend, March 19th and 20th, that you need to attend. They're happening across the country. And bring people. This is a chance and it's an urgent need for people to get organized, to take this movement and spread it throughout society, to spread the green bandana, the symbol of standing up in the streets for abortion rights, waging this fight. And on April 8th, a mass day of wearing green on the campuses, in the workplaces, on social media, in the hospitals, all over society, people showing what side they're on. And April 9th, coming back into the streets, thousands strong, in defiant, furious, diverse protest, refusing to let the Supreme Court deny women's humanity and decimate their rights, and fighting for abortion on demand and without apology, and then doubling down and calling forth even greater resistance in the days going forward. So it's an all hands on deck moment. You are needed this weekend. And to close out this segment, I want to let you hear the voices of two of the other leaders in this movement for abortion rights, who I had on my radio show earlier this week. Lori Sokol is the executive director of Women's E-News, and she is an initiator, together with myself, of RiseUpForAbortionRights.org. Catherine Bauer is a student at UC Berkeley who played a key role in mobilizing the protests on her campus. Let's listen to them as our final part of this segment.
I first want to make sure everybody listening knows the reason why we're wearing green bandanas and ask people to wear green, both on April 8th. And then, of course, when the next rally around the country is on Saturday, April 9th. And that is because it is these green bandanas that women donned in Argentina a couple of years ago when they got out in the streets, millions got out in the streets to rally for abortion rights. That bandana, that green bandana, has since been taken up as well in Colombia when they successfully marched just 2 weeks ago to decriminalize abortion. It's being taken up by people in El Salvador who are also marching. So we here in the US are also taking up that green bandana in tribute to them and in tribute to us being out on the street to ensure that this very basic fundamental right isn't taken away. So on April 7th and 8th, we're asking everybody to wear green, everyone who is supportive of women's reproductive choice, on campuses, on the job, in hospitals, on social media. This will send a mass statement of awareness. If people want to also hold cultural events, right? Local bands, stage readings, et cetera, to wear the green bandana and wear green in general. On April 9th, which is a Saturday, we're going to go out onto the streets again en masse in major cities throughout the country and even smaller cities throughout the country, making it very clear that we are back again. We're fighting to make this a leap in size and breadth, but also on this day to announce then another day where we'll come back even stronger. So this isn't a one-time thing or a two-time thing or a three-time thing. It is continual and continuous building upon each march in solidarity with our Latin American sisters, and to ensure that in the United States of America, we do not fall behind other countries in continuing to provide this very basic, fundamental human right.
Catherine was nodding vigorously when you said it's not a one-day thing or a two-day thing. So why don't you say what you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, for all the UC Berkeley students listening, for any student across the nation, listening to this radio show right now, write those dates down. These dates will matter in history. These dates are crucial now. These are our rights that are under attack. This isn't the difference between a B+ and an A on a paper. This is the difference between, that pill that you need and having to carry to term a pregnancy that you don't want. This is crucial, and it's crucial now. And so I encourage, if you're listening and you know a student, text the student, tell them about it, walk out of your classroom if you have to, make the Supreme Court listen to you, make your legislators listen to you. And so write those dates down, especially for my UC Berkeley students who I know are listening right now. I will see you on the 8th and the 9th.
Rise up for abortion rights, for abortion.